Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR. April is Fair Housing Month, and to kick off the month with us, we've invited Daniel Bustamante. He is the Executive Director of the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center. Welcome back to the program, Daniel.
Welcome, Christina. Welcome to you. God bless you.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you here today. You actually joined us about 3 years ago on this program, and I'm sure there have been updates since that time. You gave us such an interesting perspective the last time you were on this program. So we're excited that you're able to kick off the month with us this year.
It's my pleasure to be here with you today. You're such great partners. You do a great job with the community and advising them and steering them or keeping them aware of what their obligations are.
Thank
So
you.
we
Thank you
really
so
do
much.
appreciate it.
For anyone who missed that 3 years ago when we had you on the program, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
My name is Daniel, Executive Director of the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center, and it's my pleasure to have been here since it founded. Our mission is the elimination of housing discrimination and the provision of equal housing opportunities to all people. So we do our best to do the service we can. And we live in a big metro area. We never have enough people doing everything that needs to be done, but we do our best.
Absolutely. You said you've been there since it was founded. When was the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center founded?
We were founded in September of '99, right at the end of the 20th century and moving into the 21st century. So I'm real proud of the fact that I've been here
Hmm.
that long.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the organization. What does the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center do?
We deal with housing discrimination complaints and issues. We do housing discrimination investigations when people complain about housing discrimination. We do advocacy for fair housing with the industries involved with housing, with the jurisdictions, with the government that promulgates the laws. We do education and outreach to community and people in the industry and of all types, whether it's rentals or sales or financing or insurance or appraisals. Those are all areas that we cover. Uh, and we counsel a lot. We do a lot of housing discrimination counseling to people. If somebody is not appropriate to our services, we refer them out to a more appropriate agency.
Hmm.
There's a lot of great HUD certified counseling agencies in the community that are well prepared to advise individuals and families as to how to proceed if
Hmm.
they don't know. But we're a full service, what's considered a full service fair housing center. We speak English and Spanish in the office, but have capability for other languages. And we focus a lot on disability because, unfortunately, that continues to be one of the most largest protected classes that receive services, and
Hmm.
people, families with children as well. Uh,
Very good. So, what are some examples of fair housing violations that have come through your office or have been reported in the Houston area? As you know, our members serve the greater Houston area. They're far and wide, but what are some examples that you've seen in our area?
well, we deal with all protected classes of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. So they come in a lot of varieties and forms. As I mentioned earlier, disability is one of the largest areas that we receive complaints from. And for realtors and people that are in the business of selling property, it
Hmm.
starts when a owner comes to your lease into your sales office. The minute they look for parking, I should start there
Mm.
because a lot of the requests that we get from people with disabilities is the accessibility of the business office. Many times there's not adequate disability parking or signage, and but we deal with people who feel that they've been denied the opportunity to apply legitimately for a home, and we look at those carefully. And if there is anything that we can do, we try to advise them of what they could do. But the sale recently, the sale of property has been in the news a lot. I know Houston's a boom town for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the real estate industry.
Hmm.
It's really growing. We're a huge area, 7 million plus in the metro area. So people need to be able to understand and be communicated to appropriately, whether in the language of their choice, if they can be provided, or people that have disabilities with specialized communication needs.
Hmm.
Uh, but we do get complaints people sometimes feel that they're not being adequately addressed or served.
Mm.
So I would say it starts with that contact.
Mhm. So I think that might be surprising to people, and thank you for sharing that because and that I think was eye opening to me when I've spoken to you in the past was people with disabilities being one of the biggest affected classes. I don't think that's where people's mind necessarily goes when they hear fair housing, and so I think that's really a really important point. And I love that you pointed out that it starts with when they show up to your office, to meet with you. It's from the very beginning how you could be impacting the service they receive. Are there any other types of complaints that you get a lot of?
We get complaints from national origin and race. A lot of people feel that because of the color of their skin or the ethnicity of their family or their particular individual that they
Mm-hmm.
haven't been treated equally or fairly. I know it's in the news a lot of times, not necessarily Houston Association of Realtors members, but
Mm-hmm.
people that are in the business of selling property. There's been quite a controversy in adjoining counties like Liberty County with the sale of properties to national origin Latinos. And I know there's been some issues with Asian members and African American members who sometimes feel they haven't been properly
Mm-hmm.
dealt with and provided the same opportunities. But a lot of this is a matter of providing the right information and the education to both the industry and the consumer
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they understand their rights. And another area that I noticed historically is the advertising has to always be in a manner that welcomes all
Mm-hmm.
people. So the images shown on there many times are not appropriately addressing the ethnicity or the color or the sexes necessarily that are protected.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, this is a general assessment that I'm just making just with my experience, not necessarily your membership,
Of
because we
course.
appreciate the professionalism that the Association of Realtors provides her
Mm-hmm.
in attempts to continue to keep its members educated.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say the following: that disabilities and families with children, which know somebody who's disabled, we all know somebody who has children,
Mm-hmm.
are the two categories that are probably the most impacted with fair housing
Mm-hmm.
concerns and make complaints.
Very good. Thank you for explaining that. If you have questions for Danielle, please type them into the comments. We'll get to as many as we can. We don't have any questions yet this morning. Just a lot of people saying good morning to us. So good morning, everyone. So you were just mentioning some of the most common reports that you get. So what is the process for actually reporting fair housing violations? And also, what are the potential penalties for someone who may have violated the law?
Well, people initially call and they may not know they have a complaint. They may be calling just for information of what to do in case they do. But when they call our office. They'll make a complaint, and they'll be directed to our website to see if they can do it digitally. So we capture all that
Mm,
initial information. And once we do capture all the information that's necessary to contact the people, they'll be contacted by a member of staff, and an intake will be done. And an assessment will be made of that intake to see if it merits and has the elements to move forward with a complaint.
mhm,
We do administrative complaints with Housing and Urban Development HUD, and we work closely with the Texas Civil Rights Division of the Texas Workforce Commission. And from time to time, we'll engage an attorney to assist us with the filing of complaints.
mhm.
And you said penalties. I mean, right? I think it's around $25,597
Wow.
penalty for the first adjudicated or found cause for discrimination. Then it jumps to 63,900, approximately 64,000 if there's a
Mhm,
previous penalty, and it can go as high as $127,000 if there's two prior findings of discrimination. So there are penalties, and these are in the federal level. Uh, and of course, if a person sues, that could all change with a matter if depending on the jurisdiction of the court. and what they find. So there are penalties, and of course, prevention is the name of the game. And we wish that there wasn't any need for this, but unfortunately, it does happen. We're in a big city. A lot of times, people don't do the right stuff, and it's reported. So it has to be investigated, and penalties are assessed historically.
Yeah.
Um,
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, those are steep penalties, but justified, obviously, if it gets to that point and they are found to have violated the law. And again, I appreciate you sharing that with our members because sometimes they have a client or customer that they're working with that maybe feels that they were discriminated against with somebody else, or they were trying to buy a home and maybe they were shut down in some way. So I think it's important for our members to be aware of what your organization does and how to report those violations when they do occur. Obviously, this is very real and it's still happening every day here in our area. What would you respond to someone, or how would you respond to someone who maybe thinks that fair housing violations, that's a thing of the past?
we live in the 21st century right now, and the world is ablaze with activity. Literally all over the world, people are complaining about the treatments. In the United States, we have a strong history of protection of people's rights, of civil rights. It still does happen, unfortunately. The law itself was passed in 1964 and amended in 1968, and it took the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King to push the legislation in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. But it still very much exists, and we live in a big city. We very diverse population, hundreds of languages and communities here that we love to have. It's a diversity is so great. So I mean, I would say that each population has its own specific needs, but primarily it's one of communication and understanding our system of rules and laws.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the Fair Housing Act is part of the civil rights legislation, and we have a strong history of advocacy and protection of people's rights in this society. So it's just a continuation of what America stands for.
Mm-hmm.
Equal housing, equal opportunities for all makes for better communities. Um, where you live really determines the outcome of your family's ability to pursue a wealth building education for your children. The quality of your life is where you live. It determines where you worship, where you shop, where you work sometimes. And I know with COVID, we've learned to work remotely a lot. And so it's even more critically important now. And young people coming up today and children growing up today have to have that vision, that hope, that dream of owning their own home some points. And this is
Mm-hmm.
what it's all about, is making America as equal as can be, and its opportunities to be provided for everybody without any barriers.
Yeah.
And
Very good.
so, so that's kind of in a nutshell some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, thank you for that. We had a question come in from Stefan who was saying, and I don't know if you have these numbers offhand, but if you could give us an estimation, maybe he asked in 2023 how many complaints were made and how many of those were valid.
We generally receive 200 plus complaints a year. I said a percentage of about, if I would put it on maybe 10 to 20% or they have to be jurisdictional before we can pursue them. They have to
Mm-hmm.
meet the criteria. So I would say about 20 or 30 complaints a year that are processed and filed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Um, Yuko asked, what is needed, and this is right, kind of piggybacking on what you just answered. What is needed for the complaint, excuse me, to go through if no phone call has been recorded or there's no text or email thread to go back on? Is it that the person's word versus maybe in this case they said the agent's word?
Well, these are allegations, and like all allegations, they have to be looked at and substantiated. They have to be jurisdictional. Everybody has to be protected under the law, and everybody is in our society. Every
Mm-hmm.
person, every community has protection under the law. And the respondent, the person being complained against has to also be in fall under the law. And the Fair Housing Act covers rental, sales, financing, insurance, appraisal, and all matters related to the issuing of a loan. So and then the most critical element is the connection, the nexus between the complaint and the situation, and that opportunity arises, and the individual or family complaining has to allege something that can be connected to the actions taken by the responding party, which is in this case would be the people in the sales office or the realtor or whoever they identify. Um, and once you get past that point, we submitted administrative complaints are submitted to HUD, and if there is legal action taken, one of our consultant attorneys will pursue it through a lawsuit. But we work primarily doing administrative complaints.
So a very thorough investigation process, it sounds like. Um,
Once it leaves our hands, it goes to the investigative. Once it's intake by HUD, it goes to the investigative unit of
mhm.
the Fair Housing Equal Opportunity section of HUD.
Okay.
And then many times it's referred over to the Civil Rights Division, and that's housed in the Texas Workforce Commission. We have no fair housing administrative program in the city of Houston, so we utilize the Texas Workforce Commission Civil Rights Division as the investigative entity if HUD doesn't take it.
Are there any trends that you're seeing in regard to fair housing, good, bad, or otherwise?
The population is booming. I understand that Houston is probably leads the nation in the sale of real estate right now. It's a boom town, as we all know it, and we've been blessed with a boom town opportunities in this town. So it is growing a lot, and I would say that all sections of the city now are very active. The inner city has been transformed so much since the time I came here as a young man to go to the university. But I know houses and building of homes and building of communities is ongoing, and it's happening in a manner that's explosive. As you well know, it's like a concentric circle that just keeps growing and growing. The traffic will just tell you everything, but people are still looking to seek to buy a home, whether it's a condo, whether it's a home or a rural development close to the city. People are always looking for opportunities, and cost is a barrier to a lot of folks. And the Fair Housing Act does not protect the cost of it. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But barring that, everybody should be treated equally and should be in a position to not have to complain. But it starts, like I indicated earlier, from the point of contact with the arrival of the individual or family to a market that they're interested in getting into. So I always tell the industry when I present to them that it could start with at the minute they walk in and how they're treated, are the opportunities for a person who's disabled to get there, making sure that there's adequate parking in the parking lot to receive them, and they don't have any barriers, physical barriers to get in. And then, of course, it has a lot to do with how they're treated when they go into that office, and the services that are provided and offered have to be done in an equitable manner. And I mentioned advertising earlier and making sure that the advertising welcomes everybody, that there is nothing that might indicate a preference for one race or another, or one sex or another, or family with and without children. Uh, Many times, families are steered to communities where they're not as diverse as they would be in most parts. So those are just some of the.
Yeah. So, our obviously our realtor members are working with people every day: buyers, sellers, renters, landlords. What is your advice to realtors to make sure that they are not in violation of fair housing laws, even if it's, unintentionally?
Well, to have as much information as they possibly can get about fair housing and to be familiar with the fair housing laws and generally the protected classes. Everybody is protected in our country, whether as long as you're physically here. So to understand potential problems and indicate how you're going to resolve anything that might be a barrier, you might perceive it's a barrier, and to reach out to people like us or to other providers that might have this information. and make sure that your office is well equipped with people with disabilities, and for people that have a limited English proficiency who
Mm-hmm.
don't speak English well, to make sure that there's an opportunity and ability of them to get in the same information everybody else is getting, whether that's a translation of a document or being explained by a person on your staff.
Mm-hmm.
Because we still see complaints of race and color, and the Fair Housing Act covers all aspects of housing: a rental, sale, insurance, appraisals, and just anything having to do with housing.
Mm-hmm.
The courts have always held that anything having to do with housing is potentially covered.
Mm-hmm. One thing we've heard from other speakers in the past in regard to fair housing is to make sure that you're treating every client the same, that you follow the same process and procedures, whether that be in regard to safety or your methods to showing a property or whatever the case is. Would you agree with that? And also, do you believe that realtors should be documenting these processes that they have in place?
Well, you absolutely should provide the same opportunities to everybody in terms of information and education of what you do and how you do it. All questions are good questions, and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that the response is always an equitable response in terms of the information being provided. Um, if it's a single mom, for example, making sure that single mother with children is treated the same way that a family with a traditional father and mother in the household would be treated. And if it's a person with disabilities, so making sure that nothing is left out in terms of services because of the ability to accommodate their needs when they
Mm-hmm.
walk into the office or they're shown a home, and to make sure that when people are asking for homes and are being showed homes, that they're shown a diversity of homes that's on the bill, not just certain areas,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not to steer them into an ethnicity to a community that's full of the same ethnicity, to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that diverse the showings are listed. I know we have a boom town of cultures, and there's probably more languages that we do not understand than we do understand, and English is a common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
But so is Spanish and Vietnamese and
Mm-hmm.
African languages and European languages are still prevalent in our society. Um, and we're booming. I mean, areas that we never thought would be developed for housing are being developed for housing. I'm always amazed at the traditional core of the city, how it's changing or has already been changing. Even downtown
Mm-hmm.
has more residences, I think, than we thought they would have 10 years ago.
Right.
So
Okay. Thank you for that. And I know that you mentioned briefly that your organization offers educational opportunities. So, how can people learn more from your organization?
they can go to our website, houstonfairhousing.org, and see the services that we do provide. But we do gladly welcome requests for presentations to organizations or groups of people that want to learn more about fair housing. A
Mm-hmm.
member of staff will go out and do a presentation, whether it's a sales or a community group or a faith-based group or a jurisdictional group like a housing authority or a city municipality.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the law hasn't really changed a lot, but it's constantly being challenged, and new ways of interpretation are potentially coming out. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, do reach out to us via the website and indicate a need for a presentation, and we'll get in touch with you and see how we can do that.
Wonderful. And I know after your last appearance on our program in 2021, one of our affiliate groups reached out to you to have you come for a conference. But with it being April, with it being Fair Housing Month, I would urge any brokers, office managers that are tuned in to reach out to the Fair Housing Center and see how they can help you. Maybe they can come do a presentation at your office and really make sure that your agents they know everything that they need to know to better serve their clients. Well, Danielle, we truly appreciate everything you've shared with us today. Are there any additional? Actually, I'm sorry. Before we do that, I did see another question that came in. From a Nas, is there any way that the process for application to apply for Section 8 or applying for rental from Section 8 can be shortened if people can apply and they don't want to overwhelm the landlords? I'm not sure if you're.
We deal with Section 8 in terms of
Mhm.
it, people complaining about utilizing in certain properties, but I would direct that question to our partners in the housing authorities, the
Okay.
Houston housing authorities and the Harris County housing authorities that exist out there. And also keep in mind that there's HUD certified housing counselors at numerous
Mhm.
organizations. You can just Google and they're scattered throughout the city. These are great nonprofits out in the community providing help for community members. And if they're HUD certified, they understand the intricacies and how Section 8 works a lot better than I do in terms of providing that assistance to people.
Mhm.
But people, the reality is people are hurting. If you can't afford to buy a home, people are going to rent. And unfortunately, a lot of people cannot afford to buy a home and they're renters, but they're potential home buyers and they have to figure out how to get that home buying opportunity.
Mhm.
And getting your home for the first time can be a challenge, as you and I know. I mean, when you're younger, you have less obligations and more time on your hands, but it's still a barrier.
Mhm.
Income and money that it takes to buy a home. And there's a lot of great first time home buyer programs, and people in Section 8 are always trying to figure out the best place to live.
Mhm.
So we welcome questions, but I would direct them to housing authority staff or a HUD certified housing counselor so they can answer some of these questions more appropriately. But there are resources in our community.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. So, with that, is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers today?
Just to keep on trying to do your best to do the right things. We know that Houston Association of Realtors is a great professional organization with a lot of great members. And just to continue to reach out to us and to anybody else that might be helpful, provide opportunities for community members to
Mhm.
buy a home. And because the more home ownership there is, the more wealth that families can build to educate their children, as we well know, and get that first housing opportunity that you can own is very, very important.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We just got a thank you for your time and dedication from Tiffany. Just came in for you, and we truly appreciate it. And with you sharing your knowledge with us today, we did share in the comments the link to the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center website. Take a look at it. That's where people can report violations or potential violations. That's also where you can seek to get some more education from this organization. And again, Danielle, we want to thank you for your time today and your commitment to the Houston area and fair housing. This is not the end of Fair Housing Month. Obviously, we're just starting. Next month, we're keeping or next week, I'm sorry, we're keeping the conversation going with Shad Bogany, who's going to talk to us more in depth about what we're seeing in the real estate market in regard to fair housing. So be sure to tune in next Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you again for your time, Damian.
Thank you, Christina. Have a good day.
Have a good week, everyone. Bye bye.